Hello everyone and welcome to the Voiro Podcast, and I'm very excited today to be hosting Akshay Singh from Carrefour UAE to talk about all things retail media. Akshay is the Vice President of Retail Media Products and Analytics at Majid Al Futtaim, who represent Carrefour in the region. Welcome Akshay to the Voiro Podcast.
Thanks, Kavita. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're most welcome. So, just before we started this podcast recording, I was talking about how we need to have more conversations about this, and we touched upon me saying e-commerce and retail media in the same breath, and you said that's a little different, and I was like, okay, let's at least segregate that. So when I was looking at your resume, also I noticed that you had a steady theme of e-commerce, right, throughout your career, and I said, you've held on to retail throughout your career, and you're like, not really, but e-commerce I definitely did. Right. So what are the changes that you've seen? And more importantly, what is the difference between retail media and e-commerce?
Okay, great. So changes, as we know, the industry has evolved significantly in the last 2 decades, especially with the ongoing of tech and now AI, right? And then e-commerce, we are very well aware of the business, right? So it's just migrating one channel, which was primarily in store, to now convenience platform, which is online e-commerce, where we are going into 10 minutes, 15 minutes delivery, and so on and so forth, right? So the primarily business model remains the same, which is I'm buying, I'm selling, and then there is a trade in between. Now, with the expansion of all the retail across multi-channels, which is in store and online, it has given immense real estate for the retailers to think about monetizing this in a different way, right? Retail, we know, is a very thin margin game, as we are all aware. Now, what retail media does is it creates opportunities for the brands and the sellers to compete with each other more than just the price, right? To compete on visibility, to compete on how they are able to leverage data, and to make the most of their marketing money. While the retailers are able to utilize and leverage their real estate to give that platform to all the sellers and the CPG brands, etc., to win from each other, right? To grab market share in a more intelligent way, while also making a significantly high EBITDA business for all the retailers, right? And this is one of the primary reasons why this part of the business, which is what we call retail media, has seen a significant uptick in market share over the past few years. It has been different in different economies. For example, in UAE, in the last 2 to 3 years, it has scaled up rapidly with profitability pressures in the whole retail market where we are competing on price. Now, this has given us a silver lining where there is a win-win opportunity for both brands and retailers to give customers what they want, while also improve the profit margins so that not all the burdens goes to the customer end of the day, right? With inflation and
from an e-commerce and retail media perspective, what I'm hearing from what you are saying is that e-commerce is basically like a channel of sales, right? Where as a retailer, you'd end up making lower margins because you're pushing that product. And if anything, that you would probably give the burden onto the consumer. 10 years ago, there was modern trade, right? Where you would have shelf strips, wobblers, flow strips, and all of that a lot of brands would pay for to drive them to the aisle on which their stock was made. You'd have companies doing market storming and going there to make sure that all the shelf strips and wobblers or whatever we used to call them in those days were actually set up, right? And whether it was a local pharmacy or whether it was a modern trade store, you would go and do this. And that was where margins were also, because for that pharmacy or the brand would pay extra just to make themselves a lot more available to their consumers. So that has kind of matured into the retail media space and has become like, it's on crack now, right? Because it's expanding because of digitization and also like consumer behavior and so on and so forth. So in the UAE versus, you've moved across the world. You were in India, then you were in Southeast Asia, now you're in the Middle East. It's in the same region, like Asia and Middle East. And everybody has had has had a different start on the whole e-commerce and subsequent retail media journey, right? Where is UAE today, you feel, and, how do you feel it's going to look like in the next 3 years? Like, where's the acceleration going to be?
So UAE is definitely not yet at par with some of the technologies which we have seen in UK and US. but we are catching up. Initial few years, the technology adoption was slow in UAE, primarily because of strict data laws, strict governance, and also the sharing of data was very limited. The sharing of technology was very limited, right? Now, with a lot of partners and companies investing heavily into data and technology, and retail media's underlying goal is data, right? So, with that investment increasing, it's expanding and accelerating at a crazy pace, right? And especially due to the high EBITDA, which I mentioned before, every retailer is going into this. Brands are slowly maturing towards understanding this business, which is yet far to go, right? Because the industry needs to mature both ways. So the supply side as well as the demand side, right? So we have a lot of supply, but the demand needs to understand what exactly is retail media. Why should I put my money and reduce margins to put it there? Why should I not completely just end up doing Facebook targeting, Google SEO, SEM, which is the traditional way of marketing, right? In an online platform, right? So demand side is slowly maturing. Technology is moving fast, really fast, right? So you gave a very good example of how a decade back modern trade was there. We used to have gondolas, aisles, etc. And now what we have in one of the largest retail chains here is that we have digitized our in-store retail media into digital AI-driven screens, where a screen would be able to identify you as a male, female, millennial, Gen Z, and throw a relevant ad towards you, right? Along with our 360-degree measurement, right? So this technology wave is going way faster than expected in UAE. But right now it's primarily limited to retail and their specific brands who are direct partners, right? The next big thing, or the next 2 to 3 years, it's going to significantly scale towards non-endemics, right? That's the pattern which we are seeing because retailers are now realizing that they're sitting on a gold of data, which is monetized in a very limited way. There are many more use cases, especially if you go towards offsite targeting, right? So we have kind of almost saturated on-site. Now we are at optimization stage, right? We can optimize for every dollar spent, but how much more your state you can give on the app? You have to balance customer experience in the end. It should not look like an ad platform. So that pace is matured. In-store is evolving technology-wise, but there's going to be a migration of budgets from modern trade towards digitization, which will improve the ROI of the dollar spent, right? So that is a second theme which is coming up. Offsite is not an option anymore if you want to continue to monetize it, right? So that pace is really moving because look at the likes of all the major food chains, financial services, everyone needs intelligence. And what better way to get it from the first party data, right? Which is existing. So that's where the industry is moving and kind of opening up towards sharing.
Okay. So touched upon the fact of, first party data. It's been boiling, it's been simmering for a really long time, ever since like Google declared that they were going to deprecate their third party cookies. Also with GDPR and also all your consent based frameworks that came in, everybody was trying to get their first party data into in order, right? I would assume that a retailer would have their first party data in order so that they're able to run loyalty programs, target the right consumer, and so on and so forth. How do you share this with a seller, right? On one level. And second is, what role do DCRs play here? And what are the various types of use cases you feel are base use cases using DCRs? And where do you think are more nuanced use cases, as in when awareness starts growing and capabilities from a seller side also starts? I mean, when I say sellers, I mean your brands from a demand side. They also have to mature, right? Where is that going? Like, so I'm sure that there are baseline versions of use cases, and then there are more nuance. So, what is your take on that?
Yeah, that's a very important question, Kavita. So the way I'll start is, why is the first party data becoming more important? And you already touched upon it. As we are moving towards a cookieless world, in some time, there will hardly be any signals to understand customer personas, right? That's where adding value and more data, even within the retailing ecosystem, becomes important. We have to first clean our data to make sense out of it, right? It's because it's not for internal use, and now it's going to go for an external use and being monetized. And we need to be very sure of what signals are we generating from that, right? So definitely there is a transformation happening when we call upon the first party data expansion. Secondly, clean rooms, right? So how do we make this data monetizable, and how do we make it available to the external parties, right? First thing is acceptance, right? And that differs by every region, right? So what I mean by that is retailers across now needs to be more open in sharing this information outside, of course, through a clean room, but they should be open that, okay, although it's your own customer, right? But there are many more use cases. The customer can also benefit and you can also benefit. So that is the first layer of transformation, that acceptance that, yeah, I am willing to put this data outside my system, right? Because before it was not there. Data sharing was extremely limited, governance super tight, right? So that's the first step of transformation. Once retailers start to invest in clean room technology, are willing to share that information through multiple clean rooms existing in the market, so on and so forth, and then fine tune and bring more signals as we capture more information, right? Second shift has to happen from the advertiser's point of view, right? So now let's say retailers create the supply. Okay, let's say they open up the data and etc. Advertisers need to become more and more smart in utilizing that data, because that data will come at a cost. If your, let's say, regular CPM for targeting is 3, probably a personalized one would be 10 or 8 for that matter. So they need to understand what's the value of this additional $6 to $8 they're paying per CPM. So they need to get smarter that way, because most of the targeting which is happening here, it's still mass targeting through social platforms and other offset platforms, right? So again, like I said, supply will come, demand also needs to get smart, and then they need to understand the value of this additional CPM they're going to pay. And eventually they will make more money and ROI out of that, even with the higher cost, right? Because the signals being generated with any first party, especially a first party like ours, which is into multiple businesses, we understand this customer's spending power. We understand the life stage. We understand the lifestyle of the customer. We understand whether someone is a luxury buyer or not. And this is a gold mine for any fashion brand, any financial service or anything like that, right? So the opportunity is massive once both these parties open up and then are willing to contribute towards this maturity curve of this whole business.
Nice. When you talked about, what the demand side is actually running behind, and we spoke about how they use retail media, consistently across the last 2.5 years, I've been hearing ROAS as something that is driving every single impression delivery on a retail media platform. What was my return on ad spend, right? Amazon has a different way of looking at it. I can't remember it now, but the acronym was the cost of advertising, basically the cost of sale, right? So the cost of ad sale is basically what they measure. Today, we've been hearing a lot about incrementality, right? And you just spoke about also having in-store smart screens that recognize, age, gender, demographic. I don't know what else. What are the signals that it's taking in? Sounds futuristic. It also sounds offsite, right? While it's still within your same network. How can you sort of simplify the concept of incrementality, and what should the demand side, a seller, right, be looking for in terms of signals for themselves?
In my opinion, it's very straightforward, right? So we definitely get lost in the tactical things of a campaign. Let's say I run 10 different campaigns. I ran one offsite. I ran one in-store. What's my CTR? What's my ROAS? And then this numbers sometimes may be correct, sometimes may be inflated. It could be anything, right? But the incrementality of the business is the true, shows you the true picture of what's actually happening in the backend. Because let's say if you run a campaign today, right, it might take attributed sales, but maybe those were your organic sales anyways, right? It might just shift the sales from one channel to another, or it might shift the sales from one asset to another asset, or from one time frame to another time frame. I might be buying a bottle of Coke tomorrow, but I'll buy it today because I swam. But eventually, I just bought that in a month's period of time. So how do you combine all this to give a picture to a brand or any service that what exactly happened to a customer, right? So it's really important that first of all the seller asks that question, right? Because the retailer and all the service provider will be able to provide that, and they understand this concept of incrementality. So what needs to happen is take a longer time frame, let's say 2 to 3 month period, because these advertisements, the halo effect, etc., takes some time to actually materialize, right? And then just not look at CTR and ROAS for individual campaigns. Look at KPIs like incremental sales growth, customer acquisition, customer steal. Were you able to steal some customers from one brand, etc.? Were you able to reduce your churn rates? Were you able to improve retention? Eventually, were you able to grow market share? Right, that's the North Star for any brand, right? So when I was on one of the companies at a brand side, my whole sole goal was to improve market share. Nothing else. Sales goes down, doesn't matter. Market share is my North Star, right? So, but depending on the seller, there could be different North Stars. So look at a 2 to 3 month window, depending on how the business is maturing. And look at these studies where you just discard all the campaigns. Just look at the incrementals on some of these customer-oriented KPIs plus the market share KPIs to get the true picture that, yes, I invested 100 here, 200 here, etc. That campaign went well, that didn't go well. But the combined effect of including cannibalization, including multi-channel assets, is that this is what my incremental growth was. So that's the elephant in the room, and that needs to go with these quarterly reviews with all the big suppliers to constantly show them the value in a very transparent way.
Right. Speaking of transparency, do you think we have some way to go in terms of data transparency for various reasons? Right, it's also expensive actually to process and share data. It's not the cheapest thing to do. Right, there could be the reason of transparency may not always be malicious. It's also a factor of cost. So do you think we have a way to go in terms of how retailers and the demand side and retailers actually share information beyond first party and data and audiences?
Yes. Some do, some don't yet, and they should. I'll tell you why, right? So we talked about the standardization piece, and then standardization comes across when you have different type of campaigns, right? Every campaign has a different objective. So not ROAS and CTR fits every campaign anyways. So first you need to align with the supplier that, okay, the objective of my campaign is this. Let's just measure this for a campaign tactically, right? So the tactical measurement needs to happen in a standardized way. To give you a very simple example, if you are running an acquisition campaign, you will measure that. If you're running a generate on-site campaign, you will measure your ROAS and CTR. If you're running a sampling campaign, distributing free samples to customers, you will measure the return rate of those customers who will buy a sample again. So you see how the measurement is actually changing, and these KPIs are not related. They are changing with every campaign.
Yeah, you can't add all of them up and have a sum of parts. Yeah.
These are not. Yeah. So essentially, after that, you will have to do this incremental study. Now, once you have these campaign KPIs set up, so we set first set of standards with the suppliers. Second, we try to follow some of the global guidelines for these measurement, which is via IAB is what we are following. Third, when you touched upon transparency. Now, as a retailer, I would want to show a good output, essentially, right? And then, of course, there are ways to do it. There are different time frames, so on and so forth. But I'm being transparent. But of course, same data can speak multiple stories, right? So what brands and CPGs needs to do, they need to invest in getting this data, right? So some of them are doing it. So we are also able to sell not only just basic first party data, but more data streams for your brand directly to your system. So you have full transparency of your sales transactions, of your media data and everything. And then the brands can invest in their analytics or technology to have a measurement from their end. and then challenge, right? So the industry would not grow if the two parties are not taking up a healthy challenge from each other on the right grounds, right? So that's what's going to ensure transparency. If the brands are willing to invest to gather more and more data and information, and then build their own measurement frameworks aligned with the retailers' frameworks to see, yes, this is the case. We are actually growing in this business through these investments, and let's invest or otherwise, right? So that's what becomes very important. And then why I said that they both need to be aligned on a methodology is because I'll give you a very simple example, right? If you calculate incrementality, how a particular retail media network might do it is, let's say, in UAE, let's say Ramadan is come. Okay, you ran a beautiful Ramadan campaign, and then it came, let's say, in March this year. You calculated, okay, quarter over quarter, I grew 30%, or Feb to March, I grew 20%, right? But how are you taking care of seasonality? You're not, right? How are you isolating promotions? How are you isolating other commercial events? You're not, right? And most of them don't, right? So I will say, okay, you invested 100K and then your investments led to 20% growth, but that was driven from Ramadan, from your promo, from media. No one knows about it, right? So it becomes equally more important to isolate the seasonality, isolate the impact of promo and any other external parameters to show the true incremental uplift, right? And that's what we do day in and day out, because we have a lot of seasons now. We have summers coming in UAE. Now, if I look at the summer campaign, it's going to dip by 20%, but that's not actually true. Maybe without summers campaign, it could have dipped by 30%. So you still have 10% incremental, even though your sales went down in a low business period, right? So these nuances literally changes the way we do measurement and how the outputs are perceived from the brand, CPGs, etc. And this is the standard way of which I'm talking about, needs to be scaled across multiple networks and the brands to collectively mature this business, and we have more transparency. I hope that answers.
Yeah, of course, it's very, very interesting. It also signals the fact that there is a huge call for change in skill sets. Both, by obviously retailers are a completely new breed altogether, but then from the buying side, right, from a demand side, from the agency side, from a brand manager's perspective, the skill sets that you bring to the table also seem to be far more analytical in nature and understanding how you can leverage your data. And one thing that you made, like that struck me when you were saying this, is that you both need to find a trusted third party, right, for you to be able to have a common meeting ground. And I feel like companies that offer you the concepts of DCRs and so on and so forth probably could be something that you can springboard on, right? But at the same time, I'm thinking, shit, man, your analytics bills are going to go through the roof, right? So you better be making a lot of money on the other side, because, data for the sake of data also is like crazy amounts of money. And also the ability to start on skill sets to be able to recognize and review and, manage that data. So yeah, I think standardization definitely will address a lot of these things, but I think there's a lot of investment that is required.
You're exactly right. So now every marketeer, every sales needs to have that level of analytical acumen that they are able to ask these right questions from the right people. They are able to challenge this because to be very honest in this podcast with you, Kavita, this will happen because both of them have their interest, right? Retailers have their interest of showing performance the best way they can. Brands have their interest, to show value somehow from their money, which is being invested, right? So everyone is looking after it, right? So you need to have those neutral third parties, either outside the organization or inside the organization, that who are asking the right question, what exactly happened to my money? Right. So, and that needs to be there either through skill set development within these teams. Like I said, every sales or marketing guy can have that acumen or through a third party. And of course, investment in data and analytics has to be there moving forward, because you need to get more intelligence as the system are getting in parallel.
The fundamental aspect and the foundation of any new technology today is based on the fact that you have all your data organized, right? And you guys, as retailers are way ahead, because unless you have that kind of data organized, there's no scaling as a retail platform. The world is catching up to it and is trying to get on board with how e-commerce is doing work and doing business. AI, on the other hand, is deeply dependent upon your data systems, your frameworks, right? What you stand on. And we just spoke about expensive skill sets, expensive, investments. In your opinion, right, where do you think AI's application is something that will be of great importance and continued investment for retailers? I know brands, etc. There are a bunch of stuff that's happening on the AI side. But from your side, from a retailer perspective, what do you feel is something that is an important investment to make and continue to make?
In retail media business, the first thing which you very well touched upon is the sanity of the data, right? If your data is not good, then there is garbage in, garbage out, no matter how intelligent AI you put in. So let's assume that there's a premise that my data is good, right? Because if it's not, then we'd rather invest in data rather than investing just for the sake of investing in AI, right? So let's say data is clean, scaled up, right? So of course, the first few use cases which we see in the market is around personalization. Why? Because if we don't do it, there's going to be an advertiser's fatigue, all right, which we don't want this industry to experience, right? It's not good for us. So it's good for the industry as well that we get more and more relevant, even though it might cost higher, but will give a better ROI, and that the customers will value the ads rather than just thinking, okay, always say no to ads. You remember the times whenever we used to see an ad, a logo in any of the links or any of the products, we used to discard it, literally discard it, right? And now it's changed. Now people know that, okay, it's still relevant for me. I can still go ahead and buy it. The trust is increasing slowly, right? And the reason being the relevancy to the audience, right? And not only within the app, but also outside. Right, so that's why we all need to invest in this personalized ad space. Show them what is needed. Maybe a little bit of cross category is still fine, but that's the first thing which we should leverage AI for. And then we have tried multiple experiments on this piece, and we have the stream going. And for advertisers, right? So they can improve their ROI as much as 2 to 2.5x is what we have seen, right? Although it might cost money, but eventually ROI is better than before. So that's the first level of investments we should do, right? The second is, of course, AI is driving efficiency. So while we're talking about efficiency, it's about campaign automations, media planning, etc. So when we talk about campaign automation, we are in a business where if the number of campaigns scale, the execution scales exponentially, right? So how do we do more than 2,000, 2,500 odd campaigns, right, over a period of time. But then just imagine the amount of manpower needed for this to be executed in a seamless way. And then if we bring that manpower in, it defies our initial EBITDA purpose. It's going to cut through other margins, right? So that's where AI needs to come in. That's where some of the sales management tools, like from your side, they will help streamline this whole process because still extremely manual steps, taking too much manpower for executing the campaigns, and then automation will really help in that case. Second is insights, right? You talked about investment in data analytics skill sets, right? What if it doesn't happen immediately, but the need is? And what if the time to market for insights and the time to action is high, right? So we need AI to be able to generate these real-time insights. And that's what retailers and everyone is investing in VR, that how do we push these real-time insights and make them available for the marketers, for the brands to be able to decide quickly in a right direction, right? Because it will eventually help the retailers to get more campaigns, get more relevant campaigns, will help the brands to optimize on their spends, etc. So we know we all use chat GPT for our basic stuff, right? So we need an insight GPT where you are able to type, okay, I want insight for this, and you just get this output, right? The time to market will reduce so significantly that you will quickly act upon. You don't have to wait for quarterly reviews, H1 reviews, the way things are happening right now, that, okay, my campaign whole thing did not work for 3 months, and now I'm planning to do what need to be done, right? So if we have this insight kind of AI, which is proactively giving us insights on what happened, then this will help decision making very faster. So these are some of the immediate ones. Futuristic, we are all moving, as you would know, from AI towards agentic AI. Now, agentic AI is extremely proactive as compared to reactive AI. So what agents do is they work as multiple AI groups and programs towards a particular goal, which they have to accomplish, right? So once this industry matures, use cases of agentic AI are immense. To give you a couple, just imagine how much time and effort it takes right now to create a media plan for a big brand, right? And that too may not be the most optimized one. So there will be agents, and there are being agents built, who are able to now build this whole media plan. Just give them the parameters. I want to optimize ROAS. I have these assets. The agent will analyze all the data within seconds and minutes. Okay, you need to invest 30% in this banner, 20% here. The whole media plan is out there. And then the agent will execute. The agent will do A/B test, learn from the same data, and then recalibrate the whole plan and keep on optimizing, right? So that's the power of agentic AI, which is super exciting for me whenever we get these things live, if not now, then in the near future, that the media planning, the optimization of marketing dollar will happen automatically, and these agents will do the job of 50 analysts at one time. And your concern of investing heavily in analytic skill set would not be a concern anymore, right? So that will be taken care of.
Yeah, it will be negated.
Yeah. And then there are being agents who are doing the sales job, right? So imagine there are being AI agents already built in the market who are contacting to thousands of leads at the same time, and then taking them to second, third, or fourth level, and then bringing it to the sales team, so that time to market for them also reduces, and they're helping them sell the right product for the right company, right? So sales agents are also coming in. And then so on and so forth. There are multiple use cases, automated campaign bidding through agents, etc., on all the going on optimization. So that I can see from the near future point of view, next 2 to 3 years, which sounds like really exciting. And I've seen some of the demos of these tools, and they're really promising.
Very nice. This is very exciting because we've covered the entire gamut of what's happening, what had happened, what is happening, what is going to happen, and also like a distant future, which is also very accessible. When you talk about agentic AI, and when we speak about AI, every day there are like leaps and strides that are happening that you're able to access, right? So it's not even like very far into the future. It's not like flying cars. I still feel flying cars are really far into the future, although I thought by now we would be flying in like driverless cars. But agentic AI is definitely is here, and it's clear and present. But that brings me to the end of the podcast. It was an extremely, extremely valuable conversation, and thank you for being very generous with all of your ideas and your, and your information and your time, right? And thank you for joining us today on the podcast.
First of all, thanks for hosting me here. And then I hope some of these points which I made were like really honest. And then some of these things really need to change in the industry for the sake of the industry is what I feel, because we are working in the same and we all want to see this baby grow significantly. Because I feel that the future is extremely bright for retail media, and it's constantly evolving, right? It needs the platforms and advertisers, like I said, to become more and more collaborative. Gone are the days when they say, okay, this is my data, this is my data. It's not. It's the data which everyone can benefit from if we all collaborate. So that collaboration I would love to see happening in the future. Retailers opening up more, brands willing to invest in these kind of stuff, and then challenge each other in a healthy way to grow the the business, and then drive more transparency and sustainable growth, to make every marketing dollar count at the end of the day.
Yeah, I have no doubt, Akshay. You've dedicated your entire career to this. I'm sure that you're going to see better days on this. But thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you to Gautam and to Santosh and Leena for producing this. And thank you everybody for listening to the podcast. And I'll see you next time.